Paper Mario, Paper Mario, Paper Mario. One of the most talked about Mario series of all time, period. For better or for worse. As we all know about the story, blah 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 blah, we all like the Paper Mario 64 and Thousand Year Door. Blah blah blah, Super Paper Mario, that was a fun game, I really enjoyed it. Had a really good story, but what kind of fell short for a lot of people was the platforming itself, which, honestly, for a Mario game, that's kind of a sin if you think about it. And then, of course, there's Paper Mario Sticker Star, blah 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 blah, one of the worst Paper Mario games, blah blah blah, I just think it's painfully mediocre, blah 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 blah, it kind of ruined the series, and yada yada yada. Like, seriously though, I feel like at this point we all know about Paper Mario's story, I feel like there's no reason to repeat it once more. But after this game, we got Paper Mario Color Splash, which honestly, even though it's a love or hate it title, I honestly had a pretty good time with it. Exploring the game was very fun, and honestly, the character's writing was honestly one of the funniest in the series. Even though the battle system in that game was very bad. And so, jumping all the way to the Nintendo Switch, we had to wait a bit until we get to see what Paper Mario's future was going to be like, especially with the endless interviews of Color Splash. And so, 3 years later, we would finally get our answer as Nintendo just casually announced it on a YouTube video. It wasn't like revealed at a Nintendo Direct or any kind of other showcase or anything, they just casually revealed it on Twitter and YouTube. And the funniest thing too, like the release date wasn't even that far off. Like, I still remember the Thousand Year Door remake, where they were kind of vague on the release date being only 2024, but with Origami King, it was only 2 months apart. And as for the trailer itself, even though that did have a lot of the elements from Color Splash and Sticker Star, it had a bit more of a sinister tone to it. And when it finally came out in 2020, it received very well reviews by critics, although with fans it was a bit more mixed. Not helping with the fact of the endless interviews with Kensei Tanabe, with one of them so infamous that people unironically wanted him fired from Nintendo, which I forgot to say, out of all the Nintendo devs out there, I feel like the one that gets a bit too much flack is probably Tanabe himself. Like, I feel like people are just so caught up on having a blame game on what happened to the series that it honestly gets a bit ridiculous. Like, I remember during Color Splash, it was like, people wanted to play the blame game with Miyamoto because of what he asked about Super Paper Mario. And now to these days, it's basically the same thing with Tanabe. And even then, based on all the stuff that happened with the Mario series during the Switch era, it's clearly telling that everything that Tanabe says is mostly on intelligence systems and more than anything. Plus, even then, Tanabe is not really that bad of a video game developer because he has made so many acclaimed games over the years, including one that is arguably the most hyped Nintendo game of all time, period. But jumping all the way to present day, I feel like the pressure when it comes to these past Paper Mario games has been lightened up over the years, mostly because we now know what Paper Mario's future is going to be like, most likely, thanks to the Thousand Year Door remake. As Nintendo seems to be going hard on revitalizing Mario's RPG genre, which was the primary thing he had mostly on Switch during the near end of its life. But all of this leads back to Paper Mario the Origami King, the latest game in the series, and also the one I feel like people don't really talk about these days. But now, after 5 years after the smoke has cleared with this game and its discourse, after playing through this game again for the first time in years, I've came up with the surprising conclusion about this game that it's surprisingly really good. Like, even though this game sets itself far removed from what Paper Mario used to be, I think this game is generally one of the best games of the series, as it's way better than stuff like Sticker Star and Color Splash, and dare I say it's even better than Super Paper Mario. I wouldn't say it's on par with the first two Paper Mario games, because I still think that's when the Mario RPG series peaked in my opinion, but it is surprisingly damn close. Like, there's only a few things that just needed to change, and this could have been one of the best Mario RPG games. I am dead serious. Because even though it's not perfect, there are so many things I want to talk about this game. But with everything out of the way, let's get started. So the story begins in the peaceful Mushroom Kingdom as Mario and Luigi drives all the way to Toad Town. As there, Peach is setting up a special origami festival for all the Toads. But once the Mario Brothers arrive, they realize that the whole place has been deserted as it's a literal ghost town. The brothers realize something is up, so they head forth to Peach's castle. But once they enter, they realize they're locked in. And so once Mario walks deeper inside the castle, he eventually finds Peach in this weird zombified state. As she then starts talking in this very unsettling tone various questions to Mario. Where she then drops Mario down a trapdoor where he lands in a dungeon full of Bowser's minions. As this mysterious Shy Guy brings him out of the room, Mario suddenly gets a message from a mysterious voice. This so happens to be a mysterious origami girl named Olivia, who was trapped between Peach's walls until Mario was able to save her. But the meet and greet has to hold off for now as they need to get out of Peach's dungeon as they're in serious danger. And so, after sneaking through a hole in the wall, they eventually find a room with Bowser as they're doing something to his minions. And not just that, but they also folded Bowser into a literal wet floor sign. I can't really describe anything else, he's literally just a sentient wet floor sign. But anyway, so as Mario and Bowser tries to escape from the dungeon with Bowser being very pouty, they find themselves all the way up to the rooftop of Peach's castle. There, a Shy Guy then sends out his minions, which is known as the Folded Soldiers. Mario was able to take him out with no ease, but then the Shy Guy begins to transform into a mysterious figure known as King Ollie, who is the main villain of this entire game. With Olivia beginning to panic because it turns out that Ollie is her brother. Or used to be, because Ollie basically abandoned Olivia as he was the one who sealed her within that wall, and he is clamoring to be the new ruler of the kingdom as he wants to turn the Mushroom Kingdom into his personal Origami Kingdom. And to show that he really means business, he brought out these giant streamers that brought up Peach's castle all the way up to the sky and placed it right on top of this volcano with Mario, Bowser, and Olivia barely escaping thanks to this Shy Guy. And I've gotta say, I really love this cutscene of Mario barely escaping from the castle. Like, this isn't much, but it makes the game feel a lot more cinematic than usual. I especially love the scene when Mario looks down, he sees Luigi's hat like, oh crap, Luigi was in there. However, even though that they were able to escape, Mario and Olivia were knocked out of Bowser's copter as they landed deep inside of the woods. And as they try to find a way out, they see the entirety of the castle being held together by giant streamers. And so it's now up to Mario and Olivia to traverse through the entire Mushroom Kingdom to destroy all the streamers, so they can stop King Ollie and head back to the castle. The story of this game is very simple and very straightforward like any other kind of Mario RPG adventure. The game's story weirdly reminds me most of Paper Mario 64, where Peach's castle gets flown in the air thanks to this villain, as well as Partners in Time, where the whole thing about the adventure is seeing the Mushroom Kingdom getting taken over by these evil creatures. And I highly understand why people are sick and tired of the paper focus, but I don't really mind it in this game alone, most because the stuff that they were able to get away with in this game, which is honestly hilarious. And even then, some of the best part of this game's story doesn't really have anything to do with paper, it honestly has more things to focus on the Mario aspect of things. Plus, out of any other Paper Mario game, this one truly feels like you're going on a big adventure, as each of the locations you traverse through have their own unique problems, similar to Paper Mario 64. And even though it does suffer from the similar trappings of not having any original NPCs, I still think the writing for these guys are about as witty as ever to basically balance things out. It honestly just adds up to make this Mushroom Kingdom feel very alive. But overall, for a Mario RPG story, this game is pretty good for the most part with it. Easily one of the best Paper Mario stories in years. Alrighty, so jumping all the way to gameplay. So the best way to describe the overworld in Paper Mario the Origami King is that it's basically a hybrid between the first two games, as well as the exploration of Color Splash. Now for one, the world map with Sticker Star and Color Splash is completely gone, and it's replaced, we're into a semi-open world. Similar to something like the original two games where everything was interconnected. Mario's moveset is still mostly the same from Color Splash, as he can still run, jump, and use his trusty hammer to interact with the world around him, which is still very satisfying to do so in this game. But now throughout the world, instead of having these white spots you need to fill, there's these giant holes in the wall that you need to fill with confetti, as the origami creatures that King Ollie sent across the world is literally eating the Mushroom Kingdom. And so you use the confetti to fill up the hole and get a bunch of coins and rewards. And honestly, even though this isn't really a big gameplay part of the game, it is honestly really satisfying to fill up the hole and get a lot of coins and rewards. And as for other new things, well, throughout the game there's these glowing icons where if you stand on it, Mario's arms will literally grow in size. They can use to interact with the environments around him. Like being able to fold this building so you can have a little platform to stand on. And finally, before we head into the battle system, we have these special enemies called the Super Machos. These are basically giant robotic versions of regular Mario enemies that Mario needs to carefully maneuver around to defeat. With each of them having their unique attributes, like the Goombas being able to charge, Koopas going into their shells, and Shy Guys doing whatever. Plus, every time you defeat them, you do get rewarded with a bunch of confetti, which is something that is very essential to traverse through the game. Plus, similar to using your hammer to interact with the environment, there's just something very satisfying of destroying these things as confetti shoots out everywhere. Alrighty, so before jumping into more of the overworld in this game, I think it's very appropriate to talk about the battle system here. And good lord, this is probably the most unique battle system in the series, and that's either a good thing or a bad thing, depending on your taste. As unlike something like Sticker Star or Color Splash where you had the sticker and card mechanics, here you have a literal wheel. As turn-based battles this time around is a lot more puzzle-based, as you need to rotate the enemies so they can line up so you can attack. And if you line up perfectly, your attacks will be much more powerful. Now if you remember from Sticker Star and Color Splash, there was the shiny boots and flashy hammers and such. They all return in this game as proper weapons. But unlike those games where like the shiny boots sticker was a one and done deal, you can use the shiny boots for multiple times until they can eventually break. Yeah, it's basically like Breath of the Wild. Honestly, the actual gameplay loop with the battle system is pretty solid for the most part, but what kind of will make it or break it kind of thing is how long you're able to tolerate it. Like, when you first play through it, it is kind of fun, but the more you play through it, the more it just gets a bit more stale. Because the only incentive of doing battles is to get a lot more resources like coins, because coins are way more important in this game, surprisingly, than any other Paper Mario game. Because whatever happened, the Mushroom Kingdom economy is fucked. Remember when you're playing through Paper Mario 64 when mushrooms were like 5 coins? Well, in Origami King, it costs you 100 coins just for 1 mushroom! But other than that, besides the actual enemies, the actual gameplay of the battle system never really changes throughout, with the only thing that can actually spice it up a bit is probably getting you help with the accessories, which is basically the equivalent of badges. But despite that, it never really bothered me too much because unlike any other Paper Mario game, the turn-based battles themselves take a bit of a backseat. As later on, you're mostly focusing on these giant macho enemies, especially in the Shogun area. With the only actual time where the battle system truly picked up for me personally is probably with the bosses because, my god, I honestly surprisingly really enjoy doing these boss fights. As unlike regular battles where you just have to turn the tables and such, here you have to set yourself a path to attack the enemy. And while you do it, there's going to be a couple of trial and errors, but luckily there's these various letters that'll tell you what to do. So with these, it basically encourages you to try and experiment as much as you can. With each of the bosses being categorized in different things like the elemental bosses, as well as the legion of appliances. With the best bosses in the game easily being the elemental ones because I really love their origami design. But again, I don't feel like this is going to be a battle system that's going to win everyone over. In fact, I honestly still think the 1000-Year Door and 64 battle system is still the best in the series, but for what this is, it's honestly very serviceable. Although if you want to have these battles a bit more quicker, you can always have the toads help you by just paying them. Which is something I really got incentivized again because literally nothing in this game is cheap. You are really going to need coins in this game. Alrighty, so since I've already talked about the basic gameplay loop of Paper Mario the Origami King, it's time to talk about the main meat and potatoes of this game, which is the Mushroom Kingdom itself. Now, the best way to describe it, it's kind of like the original Paper Mario 64's world, but expanded upon tenfold because a lot of the areas in this game is way bigger than any other Paper Mario game ever was. Like, take the main town area, for example, Toad Town. It is unbelievably big and expansive compared to any other Paper Mario game has released yet. Doubly so with the various areas you explore in this game. Like, for the first area, it's the very simple grassy plain you expect from most Mario RPGs. But even for this very first area, there is so much stuff you can do within them, so many secrets to find, and so many different collectibles in there. The overall generally feels like a natural evolution in the series. Doubly so on how the chapters are structured in this game. As again, it's kind of structured the same way as the older Paper Mario games where each of the areas tell their own story. Like Area 1, for example, is basically a very simple setup as you explore the grassy plains and try to get all the way to this lighthouse, which is currently being blocked off by this giant dirt pile. And how you do so? Well, for one, throughout the areas, there's these special orbs that you can collect, and once you find all of them, you can enter this special Earth Temple. And in there, it's home by a special legendary Vellumental being, which is a giant turtle that can basically do earthbending. And what I like about this area is that it's been basically converted into a tourist trap by these various toads, and it's also a place where the Koopas worship as they see the Vellumental as their turtle god. But after you complete this area, this game keeps giving you more and more original areas to explore. Like, as soon as you're done with the simple grassy plain area, you're immediately gone into this beautiful autumn setting. As there's cherry blossoms everywhere, you have to traverse through the areas and even meet some of these weird people who's having a little canned food party. And then after that, you take a little boat ride and immediately head to this cool little theme park that's themed after ancient Japan. Well, your main goal is trying to head to the theater, but how you do so is all up to you, as you need to explore this giant theme park to figure out the way. And while you do so, you meet a bunch of NPCs that'll help you along the way. With one of these people being Luigi, as throughout the entire game, Luigi's main goal is trying to find the key to Peach's castle. With the big running gag is that he thinks he found the key and gives it to Mario, but luckily, even though it wasn't the key, it was a special key that he needs to progress through the adventure. So even though that he's been relegated to like this running gag, he is still very helpful with Mario throughout this entire quest. In this chapter, end things off with you putting on a big stage play alongside with Birdo, and I like how they even do a little callback to the original Koopa designs in Paper Mario games where they used to have these sunglasses. Now I have a question for you. Remember in stuff like Paper Mario Stick Star, the desert was basically the most typical Mario desert here? Well, in Paper Mario the Origami King, the desert this time around is basically one big open sandbox. And I really love the thing, like in this area, the main plot is that the sun's completely missing, so now the entire desert has this like purple and pink hue to it. And the main town area of this part is this cool little Agrabah part that's themed after snippets. You even get a partner in this area with Professor Toad with his own special ability being able to dig through secrets. As your main quest is trying to find a hidden pyramid that's home to one of the streamers. And of course, it's the lair of one of the stationaries, although I have got to say, I like how a lot of the stationaries have their unique personalities, like Color Pencils is this pretentious artist that vandalized the entire lighthouse, and Rubber Band is obsessed with putting on a stage with all the toads being held captive because of the rubber bands. But now we have Hole Puncher, who is obsessed with dancing and is highly opinionated about music. And I mean really opinionated, like he is literally like one of those disgruntled social media users. But compared to the other two, his actions here were shockingly more vile. Like, as Mario and Professor Toad traverses through the pyramid, they eventually find a bunch of toads with their faces punched out. He literally stole all their faces as the toads waddle off without a face. Like, I know that they're made of paper, but this is just very unsettling even by Mario standards. But the thing is that you actually need these toads because in order to draw them out, Mario needs to put on a big old disco party with a bunch of faceless toads as his crowd. However, after that, you leave Professor Toad behind in the desert as you head straight into the seas. Where in this area, it's basically Paper Mario meets Zelda Wind Waker as you have to traverse through the seas by looking at this map. That way it can lock the path to the Ice Temple. But along the way, there are various secret islands you can find with their own special goodies within them, with some of them being the various hidden toads. Oh yes, I think I really need to talk about this now. So when it comes to toads in Paper Mario games, they're extremely controversial, especially with games like Sticker Star and Color Splash. But I do gotta say is that with Origami King, they definitely utilize the toad in a much more unique way because rather than just being NPCs, they're also collectibles as well. As throughout the entirety of the Mushroom Kingdom, there are so many toads that are hidden within the environments. And the only way to find them is to smack them with a hammer and then they'll unfold into a toad. And every time you find one, they always have like this very fun, flavorful text to them. There was one that was clinging on the walls, and when Mario was able to unfold him, he continues climbing up the mountain. As it turns out that this toad has great taste as he actually played Breath of the Wild. But I do gotta say, I do understand why people aren't really too keen on the NPCs, because just like similar to other Mario RPGs, this one relies heavily on vanilla Mario characters. But despite that, I didn't really mind it too much for this game because I feel like with Origami King, even though this game basically stuck with the vanilla Mario characters, I still think they did an interesting enough story around them. Plus, at times, they also focus delving into the characters in their species. With the best example I can think of is these sections where you're in a coffee shop, where you get to see the Mario enemies just enjoy life and have very funny conversations, like the very first one being, which enemy is better, the Goomba or the Shy Guy? And even though that there aren't many partners in this game, I do feel like the ones that they do have does make the story a bit more interesting going forward. Like, Professor Toad was very fun to explore with, especially in the pyramid. And Captain Toad probably has the most chill vibe expression I've ever seen. Like, just look at it. I have never seen someone this chill before. He was a very fun addition during the Seas area. But also, this is when the main plot of the game really picks up, as you get to hear more about King Ollie and Olivia's backstory. As once you're able to meet up with Luigi again and give you the key, you find yourselves in a mysterious abandoned Toad house. And so once the Mario Bros. Decide to investigate the area, they find themselves in a very small basement full of origami. As it turns out that this basement was the origin place for the Origami siblings. As it turns out, as once King Ollie was created, he then folded his sister to life. And eventually, as you investigate the area, you can even find the craftsman person himself who created this whole thing. As he explained, since Princess Peach was setting up the Origami Festival, the craftsman decided to make a whole diorama of a mini origami kingdom. And so with his art project nearly completed, he only had one final touch, which is 2 origami people on top of the castle. And so to make the diorama a real show pleaser, he basically decided to do witchcraft and do forbidden origami folding. And just like that, King Ali was born, and he was born full of pride. Too much pride, because after he was created, he immediately was fueled with hatred for unknown reasons. It is also revealed that the various stationary enemies that you've been fighting throughout the game used to be regular appliances by the craftsman before King Ali transformed them all into giant monsters. And so with his legion of stationaries, it basically kicks off the main plot of this game. And I'm going to be skimming over his main motivations until the near end of this video, but I do gotta say, out of all the Paper Mario villains, I have never seen a Mario villain full of this hatred before. But of course, there is one Paper Mario character that I really have to say, and I feel like this one in particular deserves its own section. Alrighty, so Bobby. After you complete the very first streamer of this game, you're immediately going through a small little tram station. There, Mario and Olivia meets a small little Babam named, well, Babam, but Olivia gives him the nickname Bobby. This little guy is basically a wanderer because he's suffering from amnesia. And so because of this, and he really has nothing else to do, he decided to travel with Mario and Olivia with her adventure. Bobby throughout the entirety of Area 2 was mostly a bit clumsy, but despite that, he was a very fun companion, and I especially love his interactions with Olivia. It is surprisingly very wholesome. But after you complete the second area of Origami King, this is when the game decided to focus a lot more on Bobby's story. And I really gotta say, out of all the characters in this game, I feel like Bobby is a great example on what this game is trying to do with its story. And this may be a bold take, but out of all the characters in this game, Bobby's story is generally on par with something like Vivian's story from Thousand Year Door, because Bobby's story generally makes you rethink of the concept of bombs themselves. Like, we all know what a bomb is, they're basically sentient bombs. And so because of this, the bombs are able to, well, explode. As during your playthrough of the game, King Ali appears where he pushes a giant boulder on his own sister, Jesus Christ. And so because of this, Bobby has figured out a solution on how to save Olivia. But the key to saving her is located on this abandoned cruise ship called the Princess Peach. And while you explore, Bobby makes an interesting statement to Mario, as he asks Mario how much he knows about the Babam species. As he explains to Mario about the purpose of bombs in their lives as being like literal weapons. And so because of this, their lives are very short because once they explode, they're gone. But despite that, the Babams still live life to the fullest. In fact, this very cruise ship was home to a bunch of Babams trying to go on a luxurious trip, which was something that they all enjoyed until suddenly a giant Gooper Blooper attacked the ship, and so all the Babams tried to protect the cruise ship and the Toads. And because of this, they basically fulfilled their purpose on trying to make an impact. Bobby was one of the Babams trying to defend the cruise ship, but he was knocked out cold. But once he woke up, he had amnesia and lost his fuse, and so he decided just to wander off, see what's up next. But after you were able to save the Shogun Studio, fireworks then exploded in the air, and those explosions jogged Bobby's memory. And now we're running up all the way up to now. Bobby asked Mario to help him go to the cruise ship so he can find this mysterious box. As it turns out that what's in it is a fuse of another Babam that Bobby uses to sacrifice himself. But before he does so, he thanks Mario and Olivia for basically making his final hours feel very fulfilling. And so when it's all said and done, Bobby fulfills his last big task, which is saving Olivia. And once he explodes, he's gone. When it comes to like Mario allies, especially in RPG, they usually comes out like on top. Like in Super Paper Mario when Tippy seemingly sacrificed herself to save the universe, but turns out that she was alive and well at peace. But with Bobby, I think this is generally the first time where they actually did kill off a Mario character, because once he explodes, he's actually gone, like, he's dead. And once Olivia realized what happened, oh boy, she was devastated. Like, keep in mind, just a moment ago, her own fucking brother crushed her with a giant boulder, and now one of her friends that she met along the way is now dead. And I feel like this is a good contrast between Ollie and Olivia, because Ollie is a person that's full of hatred, as he views all the citizens of the Mushroom Kingdom as one and the same. And compare this to Olivia, who throughout this entire adventure sees the people of the Mushroom Kingdom as their own people, like they have lives and such. And Bobby was a great example because even though that he was just a simple bum, he was still his own person. He was still just a guy as he travels with Mario and Olivia during his final hours. And because of Bobby, you get to see more about the species of bums in general. And thanks to Mario and Olivia, they were able to make Bobby's final hours very exciting. And this is why I like Origami King's story, because even though that was set itself far removed from what Paper Mario used to be, Intelligent Systems was still able to make interesting Mario stories with familiar characters. Alrighty, so after pulling out all the sentimental stuff of this video out of the way, time to talk about the bonus stuff you can do within your adventure, because there's a lot of different side quests you can do in this game. For one, even though that there isn't any EXP for you to level up and such, you can still get a lot more HP if you explore through the areas and get these max heart points. And usually for a lot of these, it's very fun to try to explore and try to level up, because there is nothing more satisfying to find a very big heart container. Or, if you're able to find a lot of toads in this game, you can always traverse through the Mushroom Kingdom Museum. And in here, you get to see a lot of cool stuff, like various concept arts for this game, and even dioramas that are scattered across the Mushroom Kingdom. Aw, look at this, it's the very same box with the one with the fuse in it. Alrighty, so for the presentation. For a mid-gen Nintendo Switch title, this game looks freaking beautiful for the console. I love how despite the constant crap the Nintendo Switch gets these days because how weak it is, Nintendo and Intelligent Systems were still able to get really good graphics out of this thing. And honestly, after playing through this game, I generally think this is still the best looking Paper Mario game in the series. Like, even though I do love the visuals of the Thousand Year Door remake, I think Origami King gets the edge because how much bigger the areas are compared to Thousand Year Door, where that one's still based on the GameCube original. Like, generally, I am so impressed they were able to get so much out of this console with areas this massive. It generally feels like a true arts and crafts adventure. I especially love how they're able to use different kind of materials for the paper. Like, the gold parts in Peach's Castle has this, like, tinfoil effect. And I especially love how the characters move in this game. Like I love the subtlety on how the papers move. Like, every time Mario jumps, you can see a little bit of fold on top of his head. Doubly so with the origami enemies. Like, most of them has this very uncanny feel to them. Like, every time they walk, they feel like these Frankenstein abominations. Doubly so with the giant macho enemies, where they all look like your simple Mario enemies, but they have like this very uncanny robotic feel to them. Especially with the fact that you can even see their hollow inside. And the music, my lord, I forgot how good the soundtrack in Origami King is. Like, this game generally has really good range when it comes to the soundtrack. And the best part to it is that if you're not really too big on the much more jazzy tone Mario got during the Wii U era, the different varieties of genre this game has is honestly very good. And it does lead to very fun and memorable moments. Oh. Alrighty, so when everything is said and done, it's time to wrap up this adventure. So as you explore through the Great Seas, you eventually find yourself high up in the sky in this special spa sanctuary. As it turns out is that after Bowser was able to escape from Peach's castle once it was lifted up in the sky, he tries to go back into his own castle, but unfortunately was ambushed by the origami soldiers. Kamek tries to stop the invasion, but unfortunately he pressed the wrong button, and now Bowser's castle crashed into the spa sanctuary. And the Toads there are f***ing pissed. Because while Bowser is held captive inside his own castle, his own minions were relegated to community service. As the Toads charged them basically every single fee imaginable, and so now they have to scrub the floors until they can pay off. And Bowser's minions are not happy about it. Bowser Jr. suddenly then arrives trying to rescue his dad, but then gets intercepted by a pair of scissors that literally shredded the kid to pieces. I gotta find how that was clearly a callback to an animation from Paper Mario Sticker Star, but it was in a much more messed up way. as Kamek panically throws Bowser Jr.'s pieces into the spa to heal him all the way up. He was held back together, but he's severely weak because of the attack. And so throughout this entire area, you're trying to help Bowser Jr. heal all the way up because his clown copter is the only way to get to Bowser's castle in the final streamer. And honestly, I really like this area. I especially love Bowser Jr. and Kamek as characters. I especially love their dynamics in games like Mario and Luigi Brothership, so them being a main focus here is a good old day for me. Like, throughout this entire adventure, you constantly hear Bowser Jr. and Kamek bickering over the stupidest of things. Like how the minions are constantly asking Mario for coins just so they can pay off the debt, with the usual fee being 10,000 coins, but Mario says no, and Bowser Jr. is like, well, why not? It's cheap. Stuff like this is why I always like the Bowser family dynamic. But actually getting to the spots is going to be a very dangerous journey, especially when you go through the forest section, where you're constantly getting chased by a shockingly ravenous chain chomp. Like, dear god, it was gnawing down on some of the Origami soldiers with red freaking confetti. I swear, at times I feel like they only did the paper focus just so they can get away with stuff like this. Like, the faceless toads were very unsettling, but now we have just straight up mutilation. And the funniest part is that that's not even the worst example in this game, because holy crap. But anyway, so as soon as you go through the entirety of Spa and do a small little game show, you are able to confront with this giant sumo bro and enter Bowser's castle, where it's basically an all-out war with Bowser's minions up against their Origami counterparts. But Bowser in the final streamer is located on top of the castle, but the only way to do so is to find one of the keys. But as you travel across Bowser's castle, Kamek suddenly disappears out of nowhere. And after you're able to find Luigi as he gives you the key, Olivia suddenly vanishes as well. And as Mario looks around, he is immediately invaded by this, I don't even know what the hell this is. And as you head deeper inside of Bowser's castle, things get even more freaky as Mario's getting chased by this giant ghost hand while being in a hole full of severed pieces of Bowser's minions. And once Mario gets attacked by the hand, he immediately goes into the boss fight where he has to duke with him by doing rock, paper, scissors. But speaking of which, as soon as you defeat this thing, you're immediately in Bowser's throne room that's home to the final streamer. But it's also guarded by the Legion's deadliest soldier, Scissors. But before you fight this thing, you have to deal with one more mini-boss with this giant macho enemy, but this thing is made with the severed faces of Bowser's minions. Like, holy shoot, this is literally the worst one of them all. As you can even see Bowser's minions screaming in agony as they're held together. Like, again, I know that they're made out of paper, but with Mario's perspective, this is honestly just screwed up. And after you defeat this thing, you then head to the Scissors boss fight, and man, this is probably the most intense one yet. As with Scissors' personality, he's basically portrayed as like that typical anime villain. And so to make things fun, he then decides to give Mario a bit of a fighting chance by putting a case on his blades. And so for the first half of this boss fight, you need to be very careful on how you attack this thing. As if you recklessly attack this thing, the case will break, meaning that his blades are now out. And if he attacks you, it is a one-hit kill, so you better be careful. But I do have to say that it is very satisfying when you actually do solve his weakness. And so with Scissors defeated, Mario was able to destroy the final streamer, and now Princess Peach's castle is free. But they don't know a way to actually get to the castle, but luckily Bowser decides to help out with Mario on this adventure. Mostly because he wants to get back at King Ollie for what he's done to him and his minions. And so, they all decide to take Bowser's airship to Peach's castle. But before they do so, Olivia got a little bit of a surprise as she thought for a second that Bobby was returned, but it turns out it was just a bunch of Bombs. But the group of Bombs told Olivia that they get that a lot as they do all look identical, but despite that, they explained that Bombs perishing is just a regular thing, and once they go out, another Bomb will take their place. Just think of it a much more explosive cycle of life. And so, to cap things off with the Bomb story, I like the fact that besides Bobby, this is the first time you actually see the Bombs in general. As throughout the entirety of your adventure, you never see a Bomb besides Bobby. And after this section is when they actually decided to have Origami Bombs, which is a very nice detail, but anyway, so as Mario and Bowser fly up high in the sky, they're immediately ambushed by all these Origami soldiers. Mario tries the best they can to stop them, but the numbers overwhelm them, and they immediately crash right into the volcano. And so, Mario, Kamek, Bowser Jr. runs for their lives as they try to escape the volcano, as they're being bombarded by a bunch of Goomba soldiers. Kamek tries to block them off to make sure that they don't get to Mario or Bowser Jr., but they were just too overwhelming for them. And so, Bowser Jr. decided to have enough and then trapped him with the Goombas, as Mario continues to climb up. Ending things off with Mario and Bowser being able to escape the volcano and shoot right all the way up top of Peach's castle. Mario has finally arrived, but unfortunately the door is locked, but luckily Luigi is here to save the day, where he explained that he could not find the key. But in a hilarious turn of events, it turns out that the key to Peach's castle was in Luigi's car this entire time. Ah, Luigi, you green goober. Never change. And so, when it's all said and done, we are finally back at Peach's castle. As Mario, Luigi... Okay, so as Mario and Bowser heads deeper inside of the castle, as once they were able to get caught up with Princess Peach, the entirety of the castle then kicks them out as it begins to transform. As you know, this is serious, as it started playing a pre-rendered cutscene, as the entirety of Peach's castle then morphs into King Ollie's personal origami castle, which is the exact same castle as you saw back in the basement. But a change of scenery is not going to be stopping Mario, because now it's time for the final battle, as Mario heads forth inside of this giant castle, and man, this is one giant labyrinth, as the entire place keeps twisting and turning with these various puzzles that you need to solve. Honestly, the scenery here is just very surreal, as it really gives you the intense, like, this is the final battle. And why is the music so goddamn good? But anyway, so as soon as you climb all the way up to the castle, you're immediately attacked by the final legion, which is staplers. Which is the exact same thing that was creating all the origami soldiers, as well as the thing that turned Bowser into a wet floor sign. And so after you put it down, something became loose inside of Bowser, and when Mario smacked it with a hammer, he was finally able to fall back to normal. And so Bowser now has the opportunity to actually kill King Ollie. But right before they were able to confront him in his throne room, Olivia started becoming a bit more sentimental on what's happening right now, as she feels like they aren't strong enough to actually defeat King Ollie, and she doesn't know what to do when she actually gets to confront her brother. But Bowser tries to comfort her, as he states that he's not afraid of King Ollie. Which also leads to probably the funniest line for Bowser, where he states that the hardest thing in life for him was raising Junior, most because of the fact that he's an extremely energetic kid that owns his own army. I do not know why, but that line always gets me, as it's really one of my favorite dad Bowser moments. But when it's all said and done, Mario and Bowser and Olivia finally made it to King Ollie's throne room. Bowser then demands to King Ollie what did he do to Peach. As King Ollie explains, when he transformed the entirety of Peach's castle into his own personal one, he used literally everything within it. Which also includes Princess Peach, as she's literally hanging on the wall lifeless. Man, Peach really couldn't catch a break in this game. Like, she was literally reduced to a wall decoration here. And considering what his soldiers done across the Mushroom Kingdom, this origami guy is a complete sociopath. As when Olivia looks around across the entirety of the throne room, she notices that it's filled with a bunch of origami cranes. As it turns out that throughout this entire game, King Ollie was trying to fold 1,000 cranes. Which is actually based on real-life Japanese myth, as it's told that if you fold 1,000 cranes, you can actually have one wish. And for King Ollie's big wish, since his toad scribbled on his stomach and he viewed it as vandalism, he wants to commit mass genocide on a race of people now. What? I'm not kidding. Just because over this one petty thing, he hates all toads to the point where he wants to wipe them all out by one wish. And considering how toads are basically the primary species in the Mario universe, as there are so many toads over the years, this guy was about to wipe out thousands if not millions because of his own pettiness. This was so messed up. Even Bowser, the most evil thing in the Mushroom Kingdom, was disgusted by King Ollie's plan. And for King Ollie's justification, all he says is that the toads just look the same. His hatred for this one toad became so severe that he eventually grew into hating every single flat characters, and he feels very justified to wipe out an entire species all because of one toad. And just like that, I think I can officially say King Ollie is the biggest big in the Mario franchise, which is kind of saying something, because the Paper Mario series also has this piece of crap. And thus, the final battle begins, and it's a multi-phase boss fight, with the first one being you up against certain elementals. As I mentioned, I was a fan of the elemental boss fight, and having a much more shuffled version of those was pretty good to go through. But after you defeat the first phase, Olivia still pleads to his brother to stop this madness, as she explains that there's more in life than just simple revenge. But King Ollie refuses to budge as he continues constantly morphing until he changes the entire scenery and turns into his giant sumo thing. And so Olivia decided to fight fire and fire and transform Bowser into a giant origami soldier, as they then head forth doing a, I don't even know what this is. But for this phase, you need to help Bowser to try and defeat Ollie by knocking him off the arena. And the only way to do so is for Mario to use his origami arms to slam on the ground to help Bowser move. And this section can get very tense, especially when King Ollie starts throwing stuff at you. End things off with a little rush hour as you need to help Bowser before he gets crushed by a giant thwomp. And then last but not least, King Ollie grows into massive size as he wants to kill Mario once and for all. But luckily Olivia is prepared because while they were in the small little basement area, the craftsman gave Olivia a special tool that they could use. As she begins to form an origami pedestal around the area, but King Ollie refuses for them to actually activate it. And so he then breaks it into pieces and Mario needs to fix it before Poisonous Cast can kill him. And man, I really gotta keep talking about the presentation of this game because even though that this is just one final simple puzzle, I really love the action sequence here as you need to judge King Ollie's attacks. It really makes this final boss feel a lot more epic than it really should be. But once Mario was able to counterattack King Ollie, he lets himself open as Olivia is able to do one final origami transformation, which is one giant hammer. And so for the final blow, Mario then tries to knock some sense into King Ollie as he then falls down deep inside the castle. After this boss fight, King Ollie is slowly dying out, as a giant hammer was the thing to snap him out of his blind hatred. As he finally snaps out of it, he finally realizes on the damage he actually caused because of his pride. As Olivia looks at the damages, he then sees the quote-unquote scribble that King Ollie was talking about, but it turns out it was a heartwarming note from the craftsmanship. As it says that he hopes that King Ollie would become a great and rightful king, but it was because of his pride he viewed it as vandalism and it led him down a very angry path. And so for King Ollie's final request to Olivia, he then asks her to fold him into an origami crane. That way she can wish to undo all of his sins. And so just like that, King Ollie dies from his wounds. Olivia wants to fix all of the wrongs that King Ollie has done, but unfortunately she is unable to do an origami crane. But luckily Luigi arrives with the original craftsman, who teaches Olivia how to fold a crane, and just like that, Olivia makes her final wish, as she wishes that all the origami that King Ollie has folded become undone. And just like that, the day is saved, as all the destruction that King Ollie has done has been fixed thanks to Olivia. As Princess Peach in her castle has been restored back to normal. But unfortunately, since she wished that all of the origami was unfolded, that also included her, basically turning her back into a piece of paper. And so, later that night, the entirety of the Mushroom Kingdom then celebrates the Origami Festival, and I mean everyone, including Bowser and his minions. And while all this happens, Mario recollects on the friend that he had along with this entire adventure. End things off with everyone lighting up these lanterns as they lift them all the way up in the sky, concluding Paper Mario and the Origami King. And final verdict? Pretty good. Now, as someone who hasn't played this game for a very long time, I was honestly very surprised on how much I really enjoyed this game. Not to say like this entire game was like a 10 out of 10 experience, like there is some big problems, but they aren't really as significant as compared to like Color Splash and Sticker Star. Like the battle system, while it was fun, it does get very stale, especially since you're playing this game for hours. But I'd say the positives of this game way outshine all the negatives, especially with the gameplay loop itself. Like, I cannot get enough with the exploration of this game. It is honestly very fun. Now obviously this game is not going to be topping the original few games. I still think that's when the Paper Mario series peaked in my opinion. But honestly, for what this game tries to do, I say they do a very well job. And considering the position that the Paper Mario franchise is right now, I honestly say we have a brighter future more than ever. As Nintendo did a fantastic job revitalizing the Mario RPG series, and I honestly see the next Paper Mario game being a true return to form of the original game. But despite that, I honestly still think they should add elements to with the newer games. Like, unironically, if we had the battle system, original characters, and partners of Thousand Year Door, as well as the overworld of Origami King, that would unironically be the best Paper Mario game in the series. But as of now, Origami King is currently the latest original Paper Mario game, and I'm very curious on what they'll do in the future. Even though it's probably going to be a while until we see the next Paper Mario game. But it's actually the end of the road right now. I've actually made a video on every single Paper Mario game, and it took 2 years to make so. Not gonna be saying like this is gonna be the final Paper Mario video, like I have other plans maybe in the future. But as of now, I think I'm gonna be taking a break from the Mario RPG since I've made countless of them over the time. But as of now, I think I'm gonna be taking a short break from making Mario videos and trying to do other series. I was thinking maybe doing a video on Sonic R because that is such a weird game. So I think for the next time we'll be here, we'll be going over Sonic R. But that'll do for today, so thank you for watching and I'll see you later. Bye-bye!